When I first got pregnant, I got a gift that wasn't on my registry. It was a baby scrapbook to mark the first year of my baby's life. I was delighted. I like to make the odd scrapbook from time to time. I thought a pre made one that you just had to fill in would be perfect for me. I thought I'd be overwhelmed as a first time mom. It's kind of an understatement. Though I have to confess, um, some of the prompts in the baby book confused me. I didn't know why you would have one page for meeting the grandparents, but then a double spread page for baby's first bath. Was a baby's first bath that memorable? Couldn't imagine it being so, but I was wrong. Dave and I got pregnant the moment we started trying, like the moment. I've always heard about people struggling to conceive, spending months or years trying, so I was in awe when I realized that it did just happen like that immediately. Actually, it's kind of unnerving. I was sure something would go wrong. I didn't want to tell anybody. But then Dave's dad was really sick. Dave's dad has been really sick since I first met Dave. Several strokes over the years had left him with mobility issues and memory issues. He was going into the hospital for surgery, and Dave just really wanted him to know as soon as possible, just in case. It was going to be their first grandchild. We told them two things. One, we were pregnant, and two, it was so early that we didn't want anyone else to know. Dave's dad went in for his surgery, and my mother in law kept us updated. One day she called us and said that she had spoken to the nurse, and the nurse had told her, "Congratulations on becoming a grandmother." Well, he remembered half of what we told him. So for a guy with memory issues, it was a small win. The pregnancy progressed, and it couldn't have gone more smoothly. The baby grew at a healthy pace, and I grew at an even more than healthy pace, aided by my pregnancy craving for chocolate. I had no complications and just a few stretch marks more than I would have liked. As I grew a baby, Dave's dad grew more unwell. He said he said less and had more difficulty breathing, but he always smiled wide when Dave made really bad jokes or funny faces. My mother in law confessed that she felt he would not live much longer. She had never admitted that out loud before. It felt significant. Dave was contemplating a trip back to Ontario in the midst of the pandemic. He was thinking about all the opportunities for visits with his dad that he had missed. I ate more chocolate. My due date came and went. My mother in law called us and said she was working on having my father in law moved into a hospice, that his condition was rapidly deteriorating, and that they really wanted to see their grandson before it happened. I felt that pressure, even though I know that wasn't her intention. Dave wondered how soon was too soon for a newborn to go on an airplane, and I had to tell him that was not going to be an option. I cried for the man that would never get to hold his grandchild. A week after my due date, I had an appointment for an induction. I had a COVID test done and a Cervidil placed inside me. The COVID test felt like when you jump into a pool and all the water rushes into your nose and burns your sinuses out. The Cervidil felt like an itchy tampon you couldn't take out that was meant to induce some of the most intense pain a human could feel. The next morning, after the Cervidil went in, as per usual during my pregnancy, I awoke at 5 a.m. I slowly took stock of myself, and then I just felt water pour out of me. It was like I had left a tap running between my legs. When I watched sitcoms about this sort of thing, it always seemed that after the water broke, then the water stopped. That's not what happens. The water actually just continues coming at an annoyingly trickling pace. We made our way to the hospital and we were checked in. I was told I was barely dilated. We would have to wait for a bit, and then, if nothing happened, they would give me further drugs to induce induced contractions. The formula was simple: take the medication, stay for some monitoring, go to a different room, wait for 3 or 4 hours, and see if it worked. And if nothing happened, which it didn't for me, rinse and repeat. And if that didn't work, which it didn't for me, I would stay and be monitored and discuss other inducement medications that might be stronger. So it was 10:50 p.m. at night. Dave and I were watching a British comedy quiz show, and we were, for lack of a better term, bored. For the entire day, I had nothing more than a rumble of a contraction. We were sure that the baby would make an appearance the next day. Actually, later, Dave admitted to me that he thought, based on how things were going, the baby would come the day after, the next day. Doctors and nurses had come and gone throughout the day, so we didn't think anything of it when the head OBGYN and nurse came into the room and asked if they could do a cervical exam. I remember doing everything to distract myself from how uncomfortable cervical exams are. So that's probably why I barely heard the doctor when he whispered, "cord." After that, the memory is always a bit weird. It was both really fast and slowed down. I had been reclined on my back, staring at the ceiling, and the head of the nurse came fully into my field of vision. And she said, "This is an emergency C-section. Now, a lot of things are going to happen very quickly, and you are not going to understand all of them. But we know what we're doing, and you're going to be okay." I looked at Dave, and he was just stiff. Then several more nurses came into the room. One nurse jumped onto the bed as they were lowering the railing in preparation of wheeling me down the hall to the operating room. Dave told me he loved me, and I said, "I love you too." "You're gone." In the operating room, I remembered them pouring what felt like a full bottle of iodine over my abdomen before a curtain went up and the anesthesiologist was taking up my entire field of vision and giving me a mask to breathe through. And I remember tasting a different type of air before. I didn't see anything at all. I was told later what everything meant. The doctor had noticed on the monitor that my baby's heart rate had dramatically lowered. It could just have been that the monitor strap to my tummy had maybe fallen out of place. It had happened a couple times before because I would wiggle to get comfortable, but they decided to check anyway. When the doctor did the cervical exam, he felt the cord and he wasn't supposed to. My cord had prolapsed. The cord had descended into this world before my baby, which meant that my baby's oxygen and blood supply was compressed between my stubbornly undilated vaginal opening and my baby's descending head. If unchecked, this could mean brain damage or even a stillbirth. In that moment, my perfectly healthy pregnancy meant nothing. The steady kicks I had felt meant nothing. The names we had picked out, the diapers we had stocked, the car seat we had installed, the stupid baby book meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. I never felt more betrayed by my own body. It had refused to safely welcome my child into this world, and I think that's something that's going to stay with me for a long time. I don't remember waking up really. I remember being wheeled over to the sound of Dave's voice. I remember a child being placed on my bare chest. He had a gray and yellow hat, and that was his only distinguishing feature. He tried to feed, and I don't remember if he was successful because at that moment, I immediately felt this shiver come over my body and I started to shake uncontrollably. I was so cold, and all I could think about were those scenes on TV where a character loses a lot of blood and they start to shiver and they say they're cold before they like close their eyes and never open them again. Dave said I muttered several times, I really want to stick around, while the nurses covered me with a heated blanket. My friend laughed at me later. She said, "That's just how it is to come off of general anesthesia." I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to know that. The C-section had been successful. My baby had survived. Indeed, he seemed to be thriving. As one nurse had said, he's a big boy, he's a handsome boy. I tend to agree. But the what ifs left me more restless than a newborn baby. After we were discharged from the hospital, my mother-in-law set up a Zoom meeting so that my son could meet his grandfather. Dave's dad wasn't able to move from his bed. He was frail. He had difficulty speaking, but he said hello to his grandson and he called him by his name. Almost 2 weeks after my son was born, I was taking a nap, recovering some of the sleep lost from having a baby that didn't like sleeping through the night, when I heard my phone ring. It was Dave calling from downstairs. He was glued to his computer screen and had placed his swaddled son beside him. He was watching as his mother stroked his father's head and held his hand. Dave said to me, his breaths have been getting slower. It's happening. We watched for an hour, silently keeping vigil over the ragged rise and fall of his chest. Our son let out a cry, desperate for milk and comfort, and I picked him up and I tried to calm him as my mother-in-law's voice came through the speaker. He's gone. In those first few weeks of my son's life, I had many reasons to cry, and I did. I cried and I held my son. I cried on my son and tried to wipe it up. This is where I learned that a baby's first bath is important. My son's first bath was made of salt.